CIV1, the next one CIV2, and so forth.
And that number is assigned, that name goes with that number.
That name goes with that
So
number.
there should be no mistake about that.
There's 2 labels that go on this small envelope right there. 2 labels that have their name and their number on it.
Okay. All right.
And that's again all tracked into the SEAMS. The SEAMS system keeps track of that. So, what else? Yeah, so, and then there's a place also on the envelope for, like in this election, absentee ballots are going out. This is a primary for one of your contests. There's a place to request a ballot for a second primary if one is needed. And also for those who may have some type of illness or disability, they can request an absentee ballot for the remainder of the calendar year if an eligible ballot style becomes available in some contest.
So that will be mailed when it's time.
Automatically.
So that there's no, you don't have to do a request each time.
For those, if
That's been
situations,
filled out on there.
it has to be. So North Carolina, unlike some other states, you have to request an absentee ballot for every election, unless, here are the exceptions, unless you check, like during a primary, that you want the second primary ballot, so they would automatically send the second primary ballot, or if you deem that you have an illness or a disability that makes you eligible for this exception, you can get an absentee ballot for the remainder only of that calendar year. And the third exception is the military and overseas. That's one of their protections, that they will automatically get a ballot every single election for which they're eligible for, but even they too have to request it at least once in that calendar year, or do something called extend, and that's very administrative. So so you have to rely on your staff to make sure that they are taking the proper efforts that individuals who are entitled to receive a ballot for every election receive that ballot. And again, the ballots go out when ballots are available. When are ballots available? It depends on the election event. In most elections, it's 50 days prior to the date of the election. So like in a primary, except for in a statewide general, is 60 days. That's important for you guys to note, because you want to make sure that your staff, that we're getting those ballots out, especially if there's a federal contest on the ballot. They have to go out no later than 45 days. Now, North Carolina has 50 days and 60 days, but as you know, here in Bladen County, you guys were in the storm in October, I guess, and when it was time for those ballots to go out, we were in the process of preparing to send them out, and the storm messed with that. So we didn't get them out 50 days. We had to go to the 45, but we could not go beyond that with those military ballots. Every election, federal election, I have to have a conversation with the United States Department of Justice. And I want that conversation to be pleasant, so I get really mean with the counties if they don't get their ballots out. But they do a great job. So then ballots go out, and again, then they come in, and they start coming in immediately. Like the military and overseas ballots can be sent electronically. And so they will send them electronically, and the county's North Carolina law allows those ballots to be received electronically. So you can have a ballot go out one day and come back the very same day. Because of the timing, of like when you have your absentee board meetings, the counties will, the staff will have those ballots come in either electronically. If they come in electronically, that's coming in either by email or fax. Those ballots are then placed into a sealed envelope to protect the secrecy of those ballots, with the voter's signature attached, so that when it's time for the absentee board meetings, you can review those. And then all the other civilian absentee ballots that come in, those ballots have to be secured at the Board of Elections office. They don't go into the staff's desk or anything, because now they become voted ballots. And so we have the staff lock those ballots away in preparation for what you guys are going to be doing. Now, prior to doing that, something else they need to do in the SEAMS system is to process the return of the absentee ballot. So that is an administrative thing that the staff will do. They will take the container return envelope. So So the civilian ones, again, they have these labels. These labels, one of the labels has a barcode. And so when they go to the SEAMS application and there's a task to process the return absentee ballot, they will take a barcode scanner, scan the barcode, that will pull up the voter's information. It's trackable so that they know who that they're returning that ballot for. No, that the staff will do this. And we want them to do this. It puts the date in, and they will also indicate an administrative status of the return of the absentee ballot. So if they see that it's not signed, they're not taking over for the purposes of the board. This is administrative. You guys will get to it.
Administrative status.
It means that, let's say that if a ballot is missing, it's not signed. If it's not signed, then the staff in our system can indicate, we call it a ballot return reason. So that's the status. In the ballot return reason, it will say not signature missing,
Okay.
or proper witness information not provided, or something like that. There are a couple of different
So that's
reasons.
set aside then, you take it.
Well, they're still, kept together, but it's in the system. We're tracking it. And so, or if everything looks fine, it's perfect, I think the status is accepted, or okay. Sorry, I have one of my chief staff people in the back who's on our SEAMS help desk. So they're going ahead and they're making those indications. The staff, they're doing that. And why are they doing that? They are preparing the information for the board so that when you come to your absentee board meeting, not only will they bring in those ballots come out of protection and they're presented to the board, but they also have a report based on the information that they put in SEAMS, so that you will have some indication, these are the ones that based on the staff's belief are okay, accepted. I mean, you can still look to it, you can veto their decision, but they're doing that work for you. The ones that the witness signature is missing, or the voter's signature is missing, the ones where the voter's signature is questionable, and so that way that you will then know that these are the, you'll have your issues piled, and these are the ones that are okay. You should go through every single one, make sure that you agree, and then at your absentee board meeting, based on the law that Mr. Johnson went over and kind of the procedural things that I'm going over, you would then go through as part of your process, your procedures, based on the law, and make a determination as to whether or not each of these absentee ballots should be either accepted or rejected at that point. So what happens if you reject it? Well, let's talk about what happens if you accept it. If you accept it, the voter is done. They have voted. They should not come back and vote in person on election day, should not come back to one stop. They have voted. They cannot call up the staff and say, well, you know what, I want to redo. No, when you vote, you're done.
You said they should not come back and vote, they cannot come back and vote, is that in the system?
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah,
do
it.
it.
People do it.
Tell you, I'm a crook, I can't go back there and vote again, it'll be ding, ding, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So our system, that's why the system is so important in helping in this process. When you return the absentee ballot, it shows as accepted or
Locked
okay
in.
right then in the system, so that when you get to the point, like during One Stop Early Voting that's happening right now, the state has these electronic poll books. And you're right, this is absentee voting, but when you pull up the voter record, it shows you can't vote them. It's disabled. And so if that happens, yeah, you know that something has happened, that a vote has been assigned to this person. You can't allow them to vote another regular ballot. They absolutely, again, we have to be careful because you don't know what happened. It could have been that it was the wrong voter. So, Leslie Johnson, is there a Leslie Johnson Jr. or the third, right?
Yeah.
Yep. You mess people up. The poll workers up all the time with names like that. So sometimes people are human, they're not infallible, and they can make a mistake. And so what do? That's where the provisional process. And we'll have another meeting about what you have to do with those provisionals too. So it's not that it's a double voting situation. Certainly it could be. And that's what our investigators look at, things like that as well. But for absentee, once you voted, you're done. Once you receive a ballot that has, if you come in person, you put a ballot in your hand, you voted, you're done. And you can tear that ballot up, you can crumple it, you can put it into the machine, blank, you vote, you're done. And
Now,
so
if
it's the same thing.
if I voted and it was disqualified, you were gonna go into that.
I was. So if you are disqualified or if it's rejected because they didn't sign it, they have not yet voted, which means they can still vote. They can come in person and vote during one stop or on election day, or they can, that ballot is then, it's kind of voided at that point, and you can resend them, if there's time, another ballot. As we get closer to the date of an election, that gets pretty dicey. I mean, you do all that you can. In a smaller county, sometimes it's easier just to call the voter and say, this is not, at this point, you start having your absentee board meetings like 3 weeks prior to election day. So we're in that first week. It's Tuesday would be your first absentee board meeting. You table the review of those ballots until next week. So all of the ballots, I think you had 14 at the time. I'm not sure how many you have right now, maybe 1 or 2 more that have come in. But when you get to next Tuesday, you're going to have all of these ballots. Now the staff would have already gone through again and indicated the return, the administrative reason. And so if they had any that were not perfected, administratively, we would want the staff to go ahead and reissue another ballot. Although you're going to, at your board meeting, reject that ballot, we want the staff to, you don't have any choice, you can't count it for something like that. For the ones that are like, I'm not sure, then they'll wait to figure out what to do. But for the ones that are very clear that they can't be accepted based on the law and the policy, they send the voter, if there's time, another ballot. You get closer and closer and closer to the election day, that becomes more difficult. Absentee board meetings, again, 3 weeks before election day, the 3rd week, 2nd week, 1st week, the 1 week before election day, that's your 3rd absentee board meeting. And then that's when it's in that, period of time that, time is of the essence. On the Monday before election day, you have to have another absentee board meeting. That board meeting, by the way, needs to be after 5 o'clock. After 5 o'clock. So you guys are doing your board meetings at 2 o'clock. We need to check on that, Mr. Johnson, because I believe it needs to be for every Tuesday after 5 o'clock. We'll check the statute to see if there's a statutory
So that's
time.
that last meeting, is that what you just said?
Yeah, well, every absentee board meeting, but especially, I know for certain, the last meeting, because even at the state, you have to sometimes go back and read the law. That law book is pretty thick, and I've ordered you some, by the way.
Thank you.
On that last day, the reason why you have to wait until after 5 o'clock, you have to allow all the ballots, all the absentee ballots that have been returned before election day. So that would include not only the mail, your mail may come at 9 o'clock a.m., doesn't matter, because absentee ballots can be returned in person by the voter or the voter's near relative. And a log of that is kept. A log is kept of people turning in forms, requesting forms, and also delivery of ballots. So all of that is tracked manually as well. All
So-
that.
I'm sorry. So I'm understanding you to say that when we meet on Tuesdays,
Yes.
it's preferable that we meet after 5.
I need to check to make sure that that is it. That is
But
statutorily.
most definitely that last.
You have to. You have to. And the reason for that is that so this is where it comes into the counting of the absentee ballots and how that process works. So on election day, you will have your 5th absentee board meeting. So the 3 before, the pre-election day board meeting, and you have to be here for that. That is required, that the board members are here, that you have one of those. I'm not sure if it's the absentee board meeting or the canvas. I think you have to be fully staffed, and maybe canvas, that we have to have all 5, when we get all 5. But you all have to be here. But at absentee board meetings, remember last Tuesday, you guys were right. You need a quorum, but you also need to make sure that you have representation of both parties, that need to be there. But that pre-election day board meeting, all of the ballots, that absentee ballots that have been approved prior to election day will then be counted on election day. So at your 5th absentee board meeting, your election day board meeting, you can start your absentee board meeting by statute 5 p.m. Or you can sign a resolution, you can adopt a resolution to meet at 2 p.m. But you have to post that at least 2 weeks before election day. Otherwise, you meet at 5 and you go through and you start the count. Now at the count, if you haven't taken preparatory steps to go ahead and count those ballots anyway, then at that point, what are the preparatory steps? That means that once you approve it, you could have the staff, you could open the envelope, remove the absentee ballot from the envelope. This is in an open meeting, and then for all the ones that were approved, and you would have a tabulator set up. That one, and that's your administrative precinct, right? So we refer to those tabulators as a precinct. Election day, you have your precinct tabulators. That is an administrative precinct because that's for all of your absentee ballots. And then, of course, you'll have a canvas administrative precinct. But on your absentee administrative precinct, you could go ahead and feed those ballots in. They're not tallied at that point, so you don't close the polls. But you could do that. Or you could just wait to remove those ballots from the envelope and wait till election day at 5 p.m. at your election day absentee board meeting. Feed them through the tabulator, open process, and at that point, because it's an election day, you close the poll. And that would include one-stop. One-stop ballots are absentee ballots. They do not get tallied. You don't close the polls. We did the one-stop training and the precinct official training, and we were adamant about that. They cannot close those polls early. That tape will not be produced on Friday when absentee ends in this election.
So what we're doing now, one stop is considered absentee.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just need to clear
So
understand.
when those totals are reported, will the totals be for one stop and absentees that have been receiving office? It'll be all together?
But that's done on election day. All absentees are counted early in the process on election day. No, they're not released. You can't release the results until 7:30. So when you guys, and so on that absentee, now you can have, you observe this process or you can participate in the process at your discretion, but you're overseeing that count on election day. You then become the individuals who will sign the tape for one stop and absentee by mail. You then have to complete what's called the absentee abstract. And those are results. You take the abstract, you look at the results for all of the contests. You handwrite the results on the abstract. This is old North Carolina law. And then that abstract, you have to submit copies. One comes to us at the state board. We have you just, I think the law says that you have to mail it, but it also says you can send it electronically, and it's just uploaded. That's part of the detail. There's different things that has to be done on election day, and we guide them through that. But one of the ones is to get that abstract in place so that it's so important, right? Old North Carolina law, but what's nice about it is that you're now locked in of whatever those results were. They're not truly locked in, you still canvass, but you know at that point what happened. So if something comes up, you can say, well, at this point, these were the results. The ballots are still there. They can always be retallied or recounted, but you have results. Those results, because of the count, at 7:30 p.m., we'll have the counties take preparatory steps for the release of those absentees. Because you're looking at the tape, you see results, you can't disclose them, right? You can't say that they're not public. At that point, you sign it, goes with the staff, it gets sealed away with the media from the machine, that gets sealed away, and we, after it goes into your Unity, the vote tabulation software, and then they will take preparatory steps for the public release of that. That will happen right at 7:30. It's a very nice thing in our state. People are now spoiled because we know in major elections over 50% of the vote will be absentee, in person, and absentee by mail. And so at 7:30, North Carolina results, unless there's some issue in some county that they haven't posted, and we'll follow up with that. The results go live into the data feed for the media and for our website.
One question.
Okay, that was a lot,
If you just.
but we'll step you through. It's
One
like,
last question. What if I voted, is there an appeal process for the individual if you deny that vote, or you call up? And, I mean, because there's a window there, a short window of time, you gotta do this. What if I say, well, that's my vote, or that's not my vote, or whatever? After the absentee ballot comes in and something's wrong with it.
yeah, that's when, it gets really tricky again as you get closer, so we try to give people a lot of time to return those ballots. But people are human and they wait till the last possible minute sometimes. And so then it becomes, if there's time, if it's reasonable or practical, you try to resend another ballot if it's not going to be approved. Or if there's time, you call them up, and sometimes it's not time. So if it may not be time, and so those are those unfortunate situations. But there's nothing. So here, this is important. When those things happen, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do.
Okay.
There's nothing, and so we
Do your
can't.
best effort.
We don't. You do your
Yeah,
best effort,
There's
and
no
you.
liability there.
You cannot make exceptions. Oh, but my car broke down, or I had things. We get it. But there's no gray area. You have to be very firm and consistent in how you handle situations like that. It won't count. It can't count if it's late.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, here, I have a question. So you said that one stop and absentee ballots by mail or be delivered up, they're considered the same.
They're absentee.
They're absentee ballots, and that they are all totaled together, and that's how it's reported. So my question is, like in the news media, there's been lots of reports about how many absentee ballots were returned in Bladen County, not one stop, but how many absentee ballot envelopes were returned in Bladen County, and how many votes for each candidate. How did they get that information if it's not broken down?
Yeah, well, they're aggregated together. They're aggregated together. So there is something called reporting groups, and this gets into a little bit into and it's important for you guys to have information about that and how it works. So when you do canvass, you are authenticating the count. Part of authenticating the count is to make sure that every voter who presented the vote, every vote has an associated, ballots cast, but it has to match up with what we call voter history. So when you present to vote, you sign a vote authorizing document. That vote authorizing document during one stop is called the one-stop application. On election day, it's called the authorization to vote form, or the ATV. So what people who are voting today, they're not signing an ATV. That's an election day form. They're signing a one-stop application because it's really an absentee application. The back of this envelope, it says absentee application and certificate. This is their